Hey everyone. So a big part of data science and machine learning is doing data visualization. And I'm sure you've already heard of matplotlib and other packages in Python for doing that, as well as ggplot in R. But for C#, we have XPlot. And real quick, I want to highlight that this is an F# library here, and it just goes to show that we can use F# within C# applications and vice versa as well. So I'm going to be using Jupyter here, and in order to get started we should install the Microsoft Data Analysis package, and that's all we need to install because XPlot kind of comes default with the .NET Interactive that allows you to run C# in Jupyter. So I have that installed, and we'll start using XPlot.plotly, and then we'll use Microsoft Data Analysis because we're going to be using some data sets here, or a data set rather. And we still need to do this to tell the data frame how to format within Jupyter. Alright, so now let's load in our data with the data frame that load CSV. I'm going to be using the bank data set, and the separator is going to be a semicolon. I'm going to display it real quick. Alright, so it loads okay. So now let's do some plots here. So the main thing for using the XPlot here is that you need to do a chart.plot. And within that method here, you need to do a new graph. From here, you have access to all sorts of graph types that you can use. So first, let's do a histogram. And within each of your graphs, you're going to have properties here that you would give it to tell it on how to make the graph. So for histogram, all we need is an x value for our x-axis here, and we can give it the age column from our data set, columns instead of column. There you go. So now we have a data set, a histogram here. And what does this tell us? Well, it's kind of right skewed here. We have some people in their upper 80s, well into their 60s and 70s as well. But we see most people are, let's see, in their early to mid 30s. That's where most of their bank customers are. And to get another idea of our data set here, I'm going to do another histogram. And in here, I'll set the x value to the balance column. We look at the distribution of the balance here. You see it's very right skewed because we have this one item in the 71 to 71.5 thousand range, and there's one here 42 to 43, but you see most of them are near zero, with the vast majority of them having $0 to $500 in their bank account as their balance. So that's the histogram there. Next, let's get a group of the jobs here by using the group by method. And so I want to group by on the job column, and we'll get the counts of that grouping, and we can do a plot from that. Do new graph. I'm going to do a bar graph in this case because the job column is categorical, and we can easily graph these categorical items with the bar graph. And I'll set my x-axis to the job column, and I'll set the y-axis to, I'll just set it to the age column, but I can set whatever column here because the count is going to give the same count for every column. There we go. So we've got a bar graph of each of our jobs, and we can easily tell that management, blue collar, has the most amount of people in it, and a little bit from unknown, some students, and unemployed. But that's just one graph. We can actually do multiple graphs, plots within the same graph. Let's do the same jobs group, and then I'm going to do an education group. So group by education and get the count from that. Now we need to get a list of the bar plots here. So new list of the graph.bar. So new graph.bar, and this is going to be the same as the jobs one. So jobs columns job, and then we'll set the y-axis to age again. I'll create a new graph.bar. I'll set the x-axis to education columns, education. And then the y, I do the same with the age there. When I call chart.plot, I can just pass in the bar plots. So it puts both of them by itself. The unknown is shared among both columns, so you see them next to each other. But we can look at both bar plots in one to kind of get an idea of both of them. And we see it gives a legend here, but the legend isn't very useful to us. We can fix that by setting the name property. So the first one's a job, and the second one will have the name of education. So rerun it. Legend here, we see a legend is a lot more helpful now. Let's look at the jobs again here, but this time let's do another plot. I'll do a new graph.scatter plot here. I'll set the x as to the job, and the y is going to be the same age column. Okay, so we get kind of a line graph with our scatter points on here. Well, what if we didn't want these lines connecting to our points? Well, we can do that just by setting the mode in our graph to just markers. So we just get the points on here. Now we can use this scatter graph to also do an area chart. And we can do that by doing the fill property. And we say to 0x. That tells it how to fill the area. We give it the fill color. We can do green. There we go. So it fills in our chart under our lines here for an area chart. And we can get rid of those markers by saying none. There we go. So we got a nice area chart. What I think is probably one of the more useful charts here is the box chart. And we set the Y to just the age here of our regular data set. And we'll set the name to age, if I spell chart correctly. There you go. So we get a box plot here of our age. You get a lot of information from this chart too. So this line up here, this tells you the kind of the local maximum of the value within that column. And these dots up here are considered outliers because there's not many items that have this value, so they're considered outliers. And then down here is going to be the minimum. So we see most people are between 19 and 73. And then the median age is 39. And you have quartiles here. So the first quartile, which is the first 25%, is going to be 33. And the third quartile is going to be 75%, be 49. And a useful thing to do for a box chart is to do multiples in the same graph. So we could do something similar to what we did in the bar graph. Let's create a new list and then new graph.box. And I'll just take this up here for the age. I do another box plot here. So I do data columns. I do the day column here. Name to day. New chart. That plot, and I send in the box plots. There you go. So we got a single chart with multiple box plots on it. So we can kind of compare the values from one column to another. Now another useful chart that you might want to use is going to be the heat map. The heat map is kind of a 3D chart where you can give it X and Y axis, but then there you give it a Z axis as well. And then let's look at an example here. So for our Y axis, we'll give it the job column, or X axis, and the Y axis will be the marital column. And then for a Z axis, we'll give it the balance column. So now we have a heat map here, and we can tell folks who are divorced and in the services industry, they have a higher balance in their accounts. But then people who are married but self-employed have a lower balance, have a negative balance actually. Good way to kind of see correlations within your data set between two categorical features. And similarly, we can do another kind of plot called the contour plot here. Let's do the same X, Y, and Z. We go to get kind of a contour, almost like a topographical map plot here. But we see self-employed and married is again got that negative balance, but then divorced and services has that high balance there. And XPlot actually has support for some 3D graphs. So we do scatter 3D, paste in that same X, Y, and Z. Because it's a scatter, I can so just to show the markers. There we go. So we have 3D graph here, and we can move this and look at it however we want to. We can make this a line graph too by just saying the mode equal to lines. So we've got that 3D line graph. Alright, so that's kind of a introduction to XPlot within C#, and I show some of the cool things, some of the cool graphs that you can do with it that should help you with your kind of your data analysis and machine learning journey with C#. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.